I've got no idea if the lighting in this room is appropriate for this video or not. I mean, I can see me on the screen, but who knows what this is going to look like when it's uploaded. And I so need to get proper lighting, vlogging lighting. So if anyone knows of proper vlogging lighting that is not too humongous, that will sit on a desk and that will light a room, or at least light the person who's speaking to camera appropriately for nighttime vlogs, let me know, because nighttime vlogs seem to be the way that I'm going based on recent experience. Today has been a strange energy day. I again had intended to make lots of videos, but it's not that I've had an unproductive day. I've done quite a lot of tidying and, well, mainly tidying. Eventually the dust just got to be too much. We're having building work now, so there's little point in dusting. But when you realise that there is dust on dust on dust, something has to be done. So I've dusted the dust, and things are at least a bit cleaner. And here I am, not too late, but later than I intended, sitting down to make a video. The video I had intended to make, by the way, today was the next video in my Chakras to the Stars series. The last video of which, those of you who've been following will remember, was the video in which I was attacked by a bee. And it's not because of that I haven't made a video since. It's that I've just been busy and I've had other things to do and I haven't been able to prepare that video. By the way, can we just take a moment to appreciate my bee shirt, Bee Whisperer, BCC, the Bee Whisperer. I got this not long after my last video where I referred to the bee, Revenge of the Bee I think I called it. And that was a video in which I talked about the fact that I had had that experience with the bee while filming Chakras to the Stars. And after running around screaming in terror at the bee, who was doing me no harm, I decided to connect with the energy of the bee, which I did. You can see up there on my bookcase the bee card that I pulled from the Green Wheel Oracle. And I have been inviting the energy of the bee into my life. Well, obviously, the Facebook algorithms heard me because this popped up in my... I'm not going to take it off, don't worry, I'm just lifting it so you can see. The Facebook algorithms obviously heard me and presented this to me, and I had to have it because I have declared myself BCC, the Bee Whisperer. From now on, when bees come in to my filming space, into my living space, I am going to be present with the bee. And I'm going to whisper to them to be with me or not be with me as they see fit. But I'm not going to run around screaming like I did last time. I promise you that. Anyway, let's see if we can get a bit more ambient light. I feel the need of tea lights. BCC by candlelight. By the way, look at that. Can you see? Oh, look at that. A little pewter tea light holder with a little face. I got this several years ago now in Rosslyn Chapel in Edinburgh on a visit with a very dear friend who's sadly no longer with us, and we each got one of these. So tea light number one, and now I have the chance to try the little tea light holder that I showed you in another video that I got on a day trip to Lichfield at a little antiques shop. This was like the cheapest thing in the shop, but it was the thing I wanted most. Oh, so let's try that one again. So it was a reminder that the value of things really is not measured in their price. That one is lit. I know it doesn't look as though it's lit, but it is. It's measured in, well, it's measured in how much you want, I think. So, there are my ambient light tea lights, which are probably making no difference at all. Anyway, here I am making a video, and the video I've decided to make is not my next video in Chakras to the Stars, because that will take a bit more preparation. So I decided to do a VR to a tag, and it's a tag that I have seen, well, I've seen a few videos on my feed, and I hadn't really had a chance to listen to them or watch them until today, when I watched a VR by Annie from Mirth and Reverence. Now, I will just say, I'm so thrilled to see Annie back on YouTube. Annie's is one of the channels that I first found when I was exploring the pagan, Wiccan, tarot, spiritual side of YouTube. Partly because I was thinking of connecting with that community, and partly because I was just doing some research on my own, and I found a video of Annie's, which if I remember to, I'll link it below, and it was a video in which she recommended the Wiccan books that had meant something to her. And it's just such a good video because, unlike a lot of videos, which are also of course very useful and great, Annie didn't do the thing of just listing the books that she liked or had found useful. She went in some detail into why she chose each one, why it meant something to her, when she found it in her path, in the history of her path, how she had applied the teaching, and it just made the whole thing very, very real and very personal. And so I really connected with that video and watched several others of Annie's over the coming months, binge watched many of them. Anyway, she kind of disappeared from YouTube for a while and came back recently, just over the last couple of weeks. And I was thrilled to see her. And she says a bit about where she's been and what she's been doing and what she has planned for the channel. It's all very exciting. And I heartily recommend that you go to Annie's channel and have a look and subscribe if you haven't already. So as I say, I'll pop a link to her book video below, and also a link to her VR video, because she did a VR to this tag, and that's how I really first came to know the tag. And the tag is Get to Know Your Witches. That led me to the tag's originator, Little Cosmic Crow. What a great channel name. I love little things, I love crows, and I love all things cosmic. So if your channel name is Little Cosmic Crow, I am won over immediately. Even more won over when I watched her video. She initiated this tag. It's a very thoughtful, thought-provoking, interesting tag. I loved watching her video, her initial video on her channel for this tag. I'll link that below as well. And then I just looked for a couple of others, and I watched Rainbow Pagans. He did a really interesting and thoughtful tag, and I really liked how he handled the question on if a single YouTuber could give you 3 wishes, and he twisted things around a bit, and well, I'll let you watch for yourself. I'll link his video below as well. Really enjoyed and appreciated his video. And I also watched Molly Harmon's, and in fact it was Molly's video that prompted me really to make this one, because at the end of her video, I'm sure some of the others do this too, but at the end of her video, she one of the questions is who you're going to tag, or I think one of the things you're asked to do is decide who you're going to tag. And she said, basically, if you feel drawn to do this, I'm tagging you. So I took that to heart and have decided to do my responses to the video. So yeah, so that's that. That's why I'm doing this video. And it's another one of these kind of ease into it. Might not be easy to do. I think it's going to stir up some interesting thoughts. So this could be a long and rambly video. You'll know by the length of it already. And in preparation, I've got my witch mug, my Crow Tarot witch mug. I should say, before I do this, I suppose, that I think I've said before on this channel that I don't generally describe myself as a witch. And certainly I'm not religious, so I don't follow any particular religion. So I don't follow the religion of witchcraft or Wicca or anything like that. So I don't claim to be a witch in that sense. And I probably would not claim to be a witch in any sense, other than several people in my life have said to me, "Are you kidding, Brian? Of course you're a witch." And I think what they're referring to is just that if you look at the conglomeration of my interests, and you look at the conglomeration of my the practices that I apply in my life and my spiritual worldview, if you like, then witch is a word that could be used to describe some of that. And as I say, it might not be the word that I would use, not because I have anything against the word witch, but it's just not something that really would spring to mind. And yet, I appreciate and understand why others would say that about me. And also, I guess, the fact that when I saw this tag, I felt drawn to answer it says something about my relationship with the concept of the practice of being a witch. And I don't think I should say really any more on that, simply because I don't think it's something that can be easily explained. But I think that those of you who get it will get it. So, I am going to answer this tag. Now I need to decide which pair of glasses I'm going to wear to read the questions, because in this darkened room I can't see without the glasses. So do I wear these ones, which are kind of, well, they're a bit squint, and they're kind of like, they're both very cheap glasses from Amazon, but these ones are kind of like school librarian glasses, and then these ones are like 1960s serial killer glasses. So, serial killer, librarian. Serial killer, librarian. I'm going to go with serial killer simply because it's more extreme. Let's go for the more extreme, shall we? So, oh no, put the glasses on to read the questions, Brian. So, get to know your witches. There are 15 questions, which is why this video might be a bit long. Bear with me. Question number 1. Does your sun sign, your zodiac sun sign, portray you correctly? And if not, do your other planetary signs? Well, I'm a Gemini, and I would say yes, it does. It absolutely does portray me correctly. Not though, if you read this, I think it might have been Rainbow Pagan who made this point in his video as well, that if you look at the horoscope pages, you know, the horoscope column in a newspaper or a magazine, and you look at your sun sign, even people who are into astrology, and I'm not going to go into why I am interested in considering astrology, I've done that in another video, and I'll link that one below. I always say I'm going to link videos below, and I'm not sure I ever remember to do it. So if I have not linked my astrology video below, you just need to go to my channel search bar and you search for astrology. And I've done a video on something like my introduction to astrology, which explains why, whilst being a kind of skeptical person overall, certainly not being somebody who just believes things that I'm told, or supernatural things or any of that kind of stuff. Despite that, I have come to an appreciation for the art of astrology, and I go into that in my my introduction to astrology video. But what I will say here is that whilst I never have really felt that the newspaper column zodiac horoscopes have really said very much to me, what I have found is that when I went into studying astrology in some more detail, it really, really did hit home. And I've told the story before of the time I had my natal chart drawn up and it didn't match my personality at all, and then I realised that I'd made a mistake with the time, and the person doing it had made a mistake as well, and something was wrong with it. And then when it was corrected, and this is a person who didn't know me, when it was corrected, when she got the right time and put the horoscope right, it was amazingly accurate. And I've also told the story of the time that I sat with somebody and read him the interpretation of his natal horoscope and the interpretation of my natal horoscope alternately, but not saying whose was whose, to see if he could tell just from what was written in the horoscopes who was being spoken about, him or me. And he I knew it was because I was reading it from the horoscopes. He didn't, and he got it something like 100%, nearly 100% right. So he was never mistaken, or rarely mistaken, when I read something from his. Rarely did he think it was about me, and vice versa. So I've definitely come to a position of thinking there is something in it. Don't ask me to explain it exactly, but I don't need to explain it. Where am I going with this question? So yes, does it accurately portray me? Well, yes, in the sense that, being Gemini, well, there was a good example. I kind of lost the thread. So Gemini mind, definitely. Lots of interest, definitely. A life built around communication and writing and words and speaking and connecting and joining. Mercury, which rules Gemini, is the connector planet, the one that zips around the horoscope and connects and knits everything together. So I definitely see a lot of that in me. And also, it's important, of course, when you get into astrology, you realise that your sun sign isn't just about the sign that it's in, it's also about the house that it's in. And my sun sign is in my 9th house. So, so it's about kind of, you know, where you're aspiring to, what your intellectual interests are, your kind of philosophy of life, your attitude to religion and to higher mind kind of things. And definitely, for me, a lot of my life is about trying to illuminate that. That's what this channel is about. So I definitely see lots of that Gemini energy in my life, and it's there in my chart. The other interesting thing is that I have a Virgo moon and a Virgo ascendant, and so some people are surprised when they learn that I'm Gemini, because they see me as being kind of organised and together and so on and so forth. And I can be anyway. I can pull on that for myself, and certainly I can present myself that way if I need to. And so I see there's definitely some resonance there. Another big thing is that a number of planets congregate in my 10th house, including Mercury, which is my sun sign's ruler. It is in the 10th house, and Venus, which rules the which is aspecting the moon in an interesting way in my chart. So it's all kind of creative, internal, psychological, so psyche as in soul, elements in my chart congregating in my 10th house of public standing and career and position and so on. And so I think it's not any particular surprise that a great deal of my day job is about communicating, particularly communicating on behalf of those who need help to represent themselves. And the work that I do outside of my day job, my coaching and my writing and my YouTube channel, are also very much about the same kind of themes. So yes, my zodiac, my birth chart definitely represents me well. And it's one of the reasons actually that I wanted to make the series Chakras to the Stars, which I'm working on, because I found a way of translating a person's birth chart into a template of the chakras, the energy system of the human body, to see where the correlations are and to work with those correlations in an interesting way. And more of that will be coming very, very soon, I swear, on my little Bee Whisperer t-shirt. So that was question 1, and yes, the answer is yes, yes, yes. Okay. Question 2, what songs bring you the most magical vibes? Oh, okay. Well, it depends what you mean by magical vibes, and it depends what you mean, well, it depends on the context. So if I'm trying to do a magical kind of thing, or some kind of ritual or meditation, I will listen to, it has to be, say, fairly generic kind of new agey, instrumental, binaural beats kind of meditation music. I couldn't even name a particular CD or artist that I like, because in all honesty what I tend to do is just go to YouTube and find something. I have a couple in a playlist, and I listen to those, and those are kind of my, they're the kind, that's the kind of music that kind of puts me into a meditative state. There are some songs and artists who have magical associations for me. So I'll mention a couple of them, maybe 3 of them. Firstly, Kate Bush. Kate Bush, I'm a huge fan of Kate Bush. She is amazing. I have loved her music for many years now, and a lot of her music to me sounds magical. She's got a kind of ethereal magical quality and very deep artistic quirkiness that is just fascinating. And yeah, so anything by Kate Bush, particularly songs like Wuthering Heights and Running Up That Hill, which are her big hits. But one of my very favourite songs in the world is a Kate Bush song, and it is very specifically magical, and that is the song Lily. And what's magical about it? Well, there's two things that are magical. One is that it is based on and is in honour of Kate's friend Lily Cornford, who was, within a cult circle, a fairly well-known colour therapist. She was very interested in colour therapy. I think she was involved in theosophy. She was a healer, basically, a colour healer. And she and Kate were friends. And at the beginning of this song, Lily recites something called the Gayatri Mantra. And it's absolutely beautiful. It goes, "O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet." And then the music comes on, and it's just fantastic. And that's the first magical thing about it. The second magical thing about it is that the song itself is based on, the lyrics are based on, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. So basically in the song, the chorus of the song is Kate Bush calling the quarters, and, you know, calling on the archangels Raphael and Michael and Uriel, and it's just fascinating to hear her do this. And the third magical thing about it is that I was lucky enough to see Kate Bush live in concert way back in 2014 when she did her return to the stage, and she did her residency at the Hammersmith Apollo. And I saw her twice, actually. I was lucky enough to go twice. And it was an amazing show. But what was particularly amazing about it for me was she opened with Lily, which just blew me away because it's my favourite song. And I think the definitive version of the song, she did the song originally on her album The Red Shoes, and then she reworked it in about 2010, I think, for her album Director's Cut, where she did a kind of re-recorded version. And then she did it live for the Under the Dawn shows, which was the name of her residency, and that to me is the definitive version. So if you want to seek one out, I would recommend that one. It is so powerful. And of course, what I think she was doing by opening the show with that song was she effectively was casting a magic circle around the theatre and the audience. That's how it felt to me anyway, and it really did feel as though she had kind of bewitched us all into a very special space for the duration of the show. Also, the reason that song means something to me is I used it actually for probably my first ever magical ritual. And it was many years ago. I was going through a very rough patch at the job I was in at the time. I was in a position where I was sticking my neck out for what I thought was right and trying to do the right thing, but was facing lots of opposition from a number of different quarters. And it was a difficult time. And although I was holding my own, it was draining, psychologically, emotionally draining, and physically draining. And so at some point I felt I needed some extra protection. And so I sat down in my room and I lit some candles, and I got my tarot deck out, my Tarot of the Old Path. It's the only one I had at the time. And I put the aces at the four quarters to represent the four quarters, and I put Kate Bush's Lily on and quietly sang along to the song, effectively calling the quarters along with Kate Bush, and visualising the protective circle that was building around me energetically. And I can tell you that not long after that, the situation resolved itself, and I went on to other better environments. And I still remember that moment. It still sticks in my mind, which tells me that it did something fairly profoundly, psychologically supportive. So that's a song that is very important to me. So that's Kate Bush. The next person I will name is Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks is just so great and so witchy and wonderful, and much of her work with Fleetwood Mac is like Dreams and Gypsy and Seven Wonders in particular, those songs, and Rhiannon of course, which are Rhiannon, which they spring to mind as particularly magical songs. But her album, the album of hers that really sticks in my mind as a particularly magical one is The Wild Heart. And that includes songs on it like Stand Back and Enchanted and Nightbird. Oh, Nightbird is one of my very favourites. So I would say that Stevie Nicks is another offering in terms of my musical tastes. And the third one is one that you probably wouldn't really associate with anything witchy or magical in the sense that we mean here, but definitely has something magical, a magical connection for me. And that is Olivia Newton-John and her song Magic. And the reason this means a lot to me is that I have been a fan of Olivia Newton-John for years and years and years, since I was about 10 years old. And I became a fan really not long after my mum died. And one of the reasons I became a fan was, well, just prior to that I should say that I have two very specific memories of my mum that are connected with Olivia Newton-John. Not that they're particularly profound moments or anything, but they just stick with me. One is, and it must have been in 1978 when Grease was in the cinema, and I would have been about 5. And I came into the living room, my mum was in the kitchen and I was walking into the living room, and Summer Nights was playing on television, maybe on Top of the Pops I guess. And I just instantly liked it and was interested to know who was making this fantastic music. And so I asked my mum who this was, and she of course said it's Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta. I misheard that or misinterpreted it, and for quite a long time I believed there was a band called Olivia Newton-John Travolta. So that's the first memory. The second memory would have been in late 1982, not long before my mum died. She died in March 83, and she was in bed at this point, resting. She was ill by this point. And I came into the bedroom to see how she was and talk to her, and she was watching on the little television that my parents had in their room. She was watching Olivia Newton-John's physical TV special, and I still remember the moment. It was the part in the special where Olivia Newton-John is grooming her horse and talking to her horse, and it's just before the song Recovery, which is one of my favourite songs from her physical album, which is one of my very favourite albums. And so that memory sticks in my mind. And not long after my mum died, when we were, my dad and I were going to the video shop to get a video out, I think he was, of course, trying to keep me occupied and keep my mind off things. And he said, you know, what video would you like to get? And as we drove to the video shop, Summer Nights came on the radio. And that made me think, let's get Grease. So we got Grease. I watched it again and again and again. I watched it so much the tape broke eventually. I got it out of the video shop about 14 times before the tape broke. Then it broke and they had to order another one in. And then I kept watching it again and again and again. I didn't break that one, but I kept watching it. So that was kind of fun, and there was a kind of a pattern and a connection there that I appreciated. Then that year for my birthday, my dad got me Olivia Newton-John's Greatest Hits for my birthday, and I would listen to that CD. Well, it wasn't a CD, it was a cassette. I would listen to that when I came home from school. Although I was very lucky, I was surrounded by lots of people who were looking after me and caring for me. Of course, inevitably, you know, as a 9-year-old, nearly 10, having just lost his mum, there were moments when I was sad or lonely or depressed or just didn't feel great. And sometimes it would help to talk and interact with people, but sometimes I just wanted to be on my own. And in those moments, what I would do very often is put Olivia Newton-John's Greatest Hits on, put the headphones on and lie on the living room floor and listen. And her music kind of transported me to a different world, and a very safe and pleasant world, and really supported me. It really supported me when I needed support. And it wasn't just that. I did love her music. I love the sound of her voice. I still do. And she had great songs. Probably more really great songs than people realise, because she was quite. She was huge in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. She was, you know, as big as a pop star could be, but kind of left the pop career behind when she became a mum and a wife and mum, and just went off in different directions. Anyway, to round this story off, I had the opportunity, not all that long ago, beginning of 2017, to see her in concert. I'd already seen her when she came to the UK a couple of years earlier, and then she came in 2017 with Beth Nielsen Chapman, the singer-songwriter, and Amy Skye, another singer-songwriter, and they had done an album together, a trio album called Live On. And it was actually an album about grief and recovering from grief. Olivia had just lost her sister, I believe, and Beth Nielsen Chapman had lost people, etc., etc. And they were all writing from a perspective of how you handle grief. It sounds like it would be a very depressing album, but it's not. It's actually very uplifting. And anyway, I went to a concert in London at the beautiful Union Chapel, and a couple of interesting things happened. Firstly, at one point in the show, they stop playing and they invite the audience to share stories of where they have been helped through music to cope with grief. And I was there with a friend who was kind of nudging me and saying, you should say something, because he knew what a huge fan I was of Olivia Newton-John. And I'd say, oh, I've got nothing to say, I don't know what to say. But then, as the guy, the roadie who was handing the microphone to audience members walked past me, it was almost like something just took over, and I put my hand up. And kind of to my horror, he just handed me the microphone, and I thought, oh my God, I'm now going to have to stand up in front of a room full of people, not a room, an auditorium full of people, and bare my soul to Olivia Newton-John. It's a miracle I did not faint on the spot, but I didn't. And I told her the story of how I had come home and listened to her music when I needed comfort and consolation, and how her music had really helped me. And I was able to thank her for it, which was a lovely feeling. That was really important to me, that I was able to show gratitude. Even though this was somebody I didn't really know, it felt right to show gratitude. And she was lovely, very kind of unstarry about it. She was just so down to earth, and she said, oh, thank you very much, and I'm glad you could come. And I think I said something which, as soon as I said it, I thought, oh, that sounded so hokey. I said something like, you know, your music to me when I was feeling sad felt like a big warm hug, and if ever I get the chance, I'd love to return that hug to you. So I kind of sat down and thought, oh my God, what have I said? Anyway, it was fine, and the show went on. And at the end of the show, some people were allowed to meet. Well, they were lined up to meet Olivia Newton-John and Amy Skye and Beth Nielsen Chapman, because they had got in early and had managed to buy a signed CD of the Live On album that they were promoting. That entitled you to the meet and greet, but I hadn't got there early enough to do that. I wasn't too bothered. But I thought, well, I'll just go up to the kind of CD counter and just see if they've got any left. I went up, asked if they had any, he said, no, sorry. And the roadie guy who had handed me the microphone was there, and he said, oh, keep trying, because they might hand some back. And so I milled around and socialised with people a bit after the show. And then it got to the point where I thought, well, I'm going to go soon, because it's getting late. I'll try one more time. And I went back to the CD counter and said, have you got a CD? Any been handed back? And he said, no, sorry. And I was just about to leave, and the roadie guy appeared again. He said, did you get a CD? And I said, no, they're all sold out. But I've really enjoyed the show. I've had a great night. Thank you for giving me the microphone and giving me the opportunity to speak to her, etc., etc. And I was about to, and he said, don't go. Just stay there. Don't leave. And he disappeared off for about 10, 15 minutes. And I eventually was beginning to think he'd forgotten to do whatever he was going to do. I suspected he was going to get me like an autographed CD as a consolation prize. Anyway, he came back with an autographed CD and he handed it to me and said, that's compliments of the house, you're in the meet and greet, stand over there. And so I got to meet Olivia Newton-John and Beth Nielsen Chapman and Amy Skye. And if I can figure out how to do it, I will pop a photo into this video of me meeting her, grinning foolishly. She was lovely. She was just as lovely as I would hoped she would have been. And again, she said, I'm really glad you could come. And I said, well, I'm glad I could come too. And then again, suddenly, this voice that was not mine just started speaking from my mouth and said, may I give you that hug now? And she said, yes, you may. And just put her arms around me and gave me a big hug. And I can tell you that the little 9-year-old me who lay on his living room floor listening to Olivia Newton-John's greatest hits in early 1983 was doing cartwheels at that moment, and he did cartwheels all the way from the Union Chapel to the hotel I was staying in inside me. So that was a fairly magical moment. So all of her music is magical to me, but of course the song that I'd have to choose for this is the song Magic, which is from the soundtrack to the film Stanley. So those are my magical musical memories, and that's probably the longest answer I'm going to give, because I'm appreciating that this is taking longer than even I had thought it would. Which one of your deities, guides and ancestors is most sarcastic with you? And if this doesn't apply to you, which of your tarot and oracle decks is? I can give a very brief answer to this because I don't work with personified deities. And I wouldn't even say that I have any tarot decks that are sarcastic with me as such. I find tarot as a whole can really hold me to account, and it's not so much sarcasm, but quite often tarot will just say to me, look, you're going to get this, whether you like it or not, you're going to get it. And the way that it usually does that is by showing up with the same message again and again, and also showing up with the same message in different formats. So sometimes I'll find that things that I have been thinking about or contemplating in my meditations or in my path workings that I'm doing, perhaps my kind of solo practice, will show up symbolically in a tarot reading. And also I'll find that certain correspondences will keep coming up again and again and again. So I'll see correspondences between things in my natal chart or my birth chart and a tarot reading, for example. I recently also got, by the way, 3 books that are going to be really helpful for exploring correspondences in more detail, and I'll talk about them on this channel at some point in the future. And that is Susan Chang's book of tarot correspondences, Stephen Skinner's Magician's Tables, which kind of looks at different magical correspondences, and the Tarot of Magical Correspondences from Tarot Mania. So I will do a video on those at some point in the future. Okay. Biggest witchy mess up or interpretation? Well, I think for me that probably is a general answer again, and to say that it's not so much a specific thing that I have done or not done, but probably my biggest misinterpretation would have been at some point several years ago believing that there was probably a right way of having a spiritual path and I just hadn't found it, which is before I realised that it is perfectly acceptable to build your own spiritual path and to be eclectic in what you pull into that spiritual path, as long as it has meaning for you and as long as you are being honest and authentic with yourself about why you're interested, then it's absolutely possible to build a spiritual path and to find great fulfillment in that, and to not feel that you have to be doing it rigidly right by someone else's standards, but having your own sense of spiritual sovereignty, if you like, your own sense of soulful agency, which allows you to connect with your own view of the world and of spirit. And that's something else I'd like to talk about in a future series of videos on this channel. These are great questions, aren't they? Would you write a book on your craft and spirituality? Why? If you already have, what were your challenges in doing so? Well, I haven't written a book on my craft or spirituality. I have written some books, a couple of books, and I'm working on a novel. Would I? Yes, I would. I think I probably still need to do a bit of exploring though before I actually do that, because I think if I were to do it now, it would be a bit too soon. I've still got more exploration to do. But you know, my whole bag is, as I explore and learn, I like to share what I'm learning. That's really what this channel is about. So I absolutely see that happening in print one day. I'm coughing because I have an incense burner over there, which has got to the bit where the incense is becoming very smoky. So bear with, and I'm going to blow it out. That's better. I'm not good with incense that's smoking. I know that all incense smokes, but I actually was burning it in such a way that it didn't smoke. It was resin incense, so it was just wafting off the aroma on a kind of heated square of foil, and then it started to burn. And so, excusez-moi. If someone wanted to summon you to their circle, what 5 items would they need? They would need a very strong cup of coffee. This is not coffee, this is herbal tea. But they would need a strong cup of coffee. In order to wake me up from whichever dimension I was in, they would need a tarot deck. And ideally it would be one of my favourite tarot decks, so something like Tarot of the Old Path or the Spiral Tarot. But I would accept their favourite tarot deck as well. And the reason they'd need that is I'd want them to lay the aces out at the 4 quarters of their circle as a way of honouring the 4 elements and the 4 quarters. Coffee, tarot deck. We spoke about witchy music, but actually the music I would ask them to have is not Kate Bush, it's not Stevie Nicks, and it's not Olivia Newton-John. It's another of my favourite singers, Nancy Griffith. Her music is probably the closest to music that describes my soul as any I've ever found. So that would be very appropriate. So that's 3. What else? What else? The 4th thing I'd want them to have is something that was precious to them. So, because I'd want them, if they were calling me into their circle, I would assume that they were calling me in order for me to do something for them. So I'd want something that helped me understand them and their energy. So something that was precious to them would be the 4th thing. And then the 5th thing would have to be another drink. So the coffee has woken me up. So I would like a fine malt whiskey to calm me down after the ritual or whatever it is we were going to do. And my favourite malt whiskies are the smoky ones like Ardbeg or Talisker or Jura. So yeah, those are the 5 things. I love that question. If you were a ghost, what place would you haunt? Well, I don't think I would haunt a place. I would maybe guard a place. Maybe the Isle of Iona. That's a very special place for me. Also, there's a little field in my hometown of Carnoustie where I had a, I suppose you would call it a spiritual experience, a transcendent experience once. Just being in nature and feeling a deep sense of wonder, and it'd be good to be there. I wouldn't mind haunting some people. Anyone who does harm to others or who is unkind to others, I'd quite happily haunt the shit out of them. What is the funniest way someone has reacted to finding out you're a witch? I don't think anyone has ever really reacted in a funny way to finding out I'm a witch. And as I say, they don't normally find out I'm a witch because it's not how I would describe myself, but sometimes people will see that in me. Certainly I've had some strange reactions when people realise that I read tarot cards. You know, and really they're just general reactions, like people suddenly look at you as though you've suddenly developed horns or this strange ethereal glow, like you're some kind of, you know, amazing psychic being. So that's always kind of amusing. But never really funny ones, and thankfully never really negative ones. I think certainly in Facebook land and social media land, I have noticed some people with just kind of pulling away from me since I've launched my YouTube channel, probably thinking he's a bit weird. But what surprised me there is that they hadn't clocked that already. Okay. Do you have any superstitions? I like to think that I don't, but I obviously do, because I do things like I knock on wood sometimes, or I don't walk under a ladder, and if I see a magpie, I like it. I prefer to see two of them than one, because it's one for sorrow, two for joy. And you know, you're meant to salute a magpie or say hello, Mr. Magpie, if you only see one. See one, and I sometimes do that. So yeah, I am superstitious, but it's not based on anything. I think my superstitions are a bit kind of habitual, and they're probably based on seeing other people in my life carry out those habits. So I don't really believe in superstition, if that helps in the answer. If you could possess any fantasy magic, what would your power be? Well, the one that I sometimes hanker after is the power of time travel. You know, sometimes I'll be watching a film or something that was set, say, in 1976, and I think, oh, it would be so fascinating to just step through that screen and be in 1976. And maybe even to go to my house where I lived. I would have been 3 years old, and to peer through the window and just see what was happening there, and you know, what I was doing and what my parents were doing, and you know, see the friends I was playing with and so on. And I have a kind of a wistful longing for that kind of experience, but at the same time I know it would also be very bittersweet, because you can't go back again. And I don't really think that would work, but I don't really believe that time is a thing in that sense, a linear thing the way that we think it is. So I sometimes hanker after that, but I wouldn't really like it. I think it could probably be quite upsetting as well. Flight. I'd love to be able to fly, that would be great. Oh, and also, in terms of a specific power, you know Wonder Woman, when she used to spin round and change clothes? I would love to be able to do that. I would love to be able to just get up in the morning, not have to rake through the wardrobe figuring out what the hell to wear, or ironing a shirt and ironing trousers and all that kind of crap. If I could just get up, spin round and be changed and ready for work, that would be great. So that's the one I pick. What is something random on your altars? I don't really have an altar. I've got what I might call sacred space, and there is nothing particularly random on it, although I'm looking at the moment at my sacred space on my bookcases and mantelpiece over there, and I have got a 6-volume set. In fact, let me get it, I'll show you. I've brought one over, I'm not bringing them both over because they're very heavy. I've got a 6-volume set of the Folk Tales of Britain by Catherine M. Briggs, and it's divided into narratives, which is this lot, and legends, which is in red bound books over there, and they are absolutely beautiful folio editions of various folk tales and ballads and legends and so on. And yeah, it's a bit random, but I love it. So that's my random thing on my kind of altar. If one of the YouTubers you watch was a genie and they could grant you 3 wishes within their power, who would it be and what wishes? It can't be for more wishes. This is a hard one because I think I learned something new from all my YouTube subscriptions that I watch. But given that I was first put onto this tag by Annie at Mirth and Reverence, I'm going to pick Annie. And I'm going to say that if she could give me, through the power of her magic, the depth of her experience and wisdom based on many, many, many years of practice, which she talks about so eloquently on her channel, then that would be what I would wish for. But of course, I am doing that, saying that very tongue-in-cheek, because I know that that's something that is impossible to give without a person living it. So I will just say that I look forward to living it, and thank goodness that we have people like Annie who are able to show us the wonders that await in terms of more practice and more study and more learning. And thank goodness we have younger people like Little Cosmic Crow who do fantastic tags like this and show us the people who are coming along and learning and growing at all levels. So there are people who are before us, there are people behind us, there are people at the side of us, and it's wonderful to grow and develop together. And that's one of the key things I think is so great about this community on YouTube. So much learning to be had, so much sharing. If you could instantly become an expert in any part of your craft or spirituality, what would it be? Well, if you could instantly become an expert, probably the study of myth and legend. I'd love to be able to know more and more accurately about the myths and legends of the world. I mean, I know about many of them and I can look many of them up, but I'd love to be one of these people who just, like Joseph Campbell, who was just able to go and, you know, pick a myth from Native American myth or from Celtic myth or, you know, from Norse myth, just like that, and could see the connections between them and could see the deeper meaning of them. I would love to have that kind of expertise. That would be lovely. When you die, what do you think will happen to you or your soul? In all honesty, I think I, as I perceive myself to be, will go back to wherever or whatever I was before I began to perceive myself to be. So this is a very difficult question to answer, because on the one hand I could interpret my life in a linear fashion and say I'll die and I'll just be as non-existent as I was before I was born. Another way of looking at it is, and this is where my kind of study of non-dualism comes in, if we get really still and honest with ourselves, what we come to see is that we, the person we perceive ourselves to be, have no beginning and no end. You know, if you try to find the beginning of your life, you're not going to find it, because at some point what you notice is that your memories just kind of dissipate and fade, and even it's not that you have a knowledge of not being there, it's just that there's something diffuse way back when, and it's possible that the same is ahead. So the most I can say about this, in all honesty, is I don't know, and I love that. So, final question. This will actually manage to be less than an hour, which is quite something. Where do you see yourself spiritually in the next 5 years? Well, I hope non-spiritually. I hope physically I'm in a more centered and stable place, because at the moment my life is busy, and there's quite a lot happening, and it's not all terribly stable. I mean, a lot of the work that's going on, just basic things in the house and so on, leaves me hankering after a sense of stability that is kind of absent in some ways at the moment. So first of all, I hope that is in place. And that's not really spiritual, that's to do with just environment and circumstances. Spiritually, I hope to be doing more of what I'm doing already, which is learning and growing, and most of all sharing. I hope that in 5 years' time, I'm still here talking to you about what I've learned and interacting with you about the things that you're teaching me in this community. And of course, who knows what form it will take in 5 years? Who knows whether YouTube will be here, or if it is, what format it will be in. I don't know any of that. I just know that I hope that in 5 years I am continuing to grow. I see myself really as a perpetual student of the mysteries, and I hope I always will be. The clue is in perpetual. So yes, I hope that in 5 years' time I'll be able to post this video and say, look at what I said I thought I'd be doing in 5 years' time, and here's what I'm actually doing. I also hope, by the way, by then I will have done a lot more writing and have had a lot more writing published. Perhaps even the book on my spiritual path that I mentioned earlier, as well as my novel, which I'm still working on, kind of, in between building demolitions and goodness knows what else. So anyway, that's the tag. I have answered all of the questions. I am going to close before the hour is up. That has been very enjoyable to do. I really enjoyed sharing all this with you. I've really enjoyed watching the tags that I've watched. I'm going to go and watch some more. And just like Molly did at the end of her video, I'm going to say that I am tagging you if you think this would be an interesting tag to do. I would love to see your responses. And I want to say a very big thank you to Annie at Mirth and Reverence, to Rainbow Pagan, to Molly Harmon, and most of all, of course, to Little Cosmic Crow, who originated this tag, which has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you all again very soon.